as well. Okay. So, welcome to day one of ACT. So today, our focus would be, I want all of you like to put your feet into the world of ACT. Imagine ACT is like this water and this ocean. So today, our journey would be us holding hands together and okay, let's just put our feet in. What is this ACT all about, right? So it's important to understand the principles of what drives this act in the first place to even apply act with anybody, okay, or whether clinical population, non-clinical population. So let's do that today, okay? So before I start sharing my PPT to start with that, I just want to gather and let's say understanding or what comes to your mind when you hear the word okay. Before even that, something I noticed yesterday was some of you use the word ACT, okay, to describe act. And I want to tell you all, if you can just take one thing from this training, I want you to take a lot of things from this training, okay, but even if just one thing, it is not called ACT like we call CBT or DBT, but it is called ACT for decades in ACT community, because it is more coming from behavioral school of thought and action oriented approach, okay. So that is why it is called ACT rather than ACT, okay. So next time if somebody ask you about this approach and when you define this approach, either you can like call acceptance and commitment therapy its full form, or act, rather than ACT, okay. So okay, I think we started with our first learning. So okay, let's just one thing I want all of us to ensure that we create a respectful space for other people. So we are not going to judge anybody if they put their opinion. There's no silly questions, I want you all to know. So if anybody else is answering, if anybody else is putting the point of view opinion, we all respect that, okay, because we are all on a different learning journey. We all have different experiences in the field as such. So there's no right, wrong, silly answers and as such. So we're welcome to all kinds of question, all kinds of answers, so with that being said, my first question to all of you would be, what comes to your mind when you hear acceptance and commitment therapy? You can use the chat box, you can unmute yourself and
Accepting our behavior.
answer.
Am I
Okay,
audible?
okay.
Accepting our behavioral changes through which we are going to give a commitment. If there are negative things, we have to change it. So somewhere our mindfulness is going to work.
Okay, so I'm,
Behavioral
yeah,
changes, which we are going to accept and later we are going to work on it.
commit towards changes which we're gonna accept and later work on it. Okay, Priya, I hear
Somewhere
you.
like cognitive distortions
Um,
on which we are going to work.
cognitive.
Somewhere it's like a cognitive distortions where we are going to work on it.
You said cognitive dissonance or
Distortion.
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 Distortions. Okay. I hear you. Okay. Anybody else? What comes to your mind? It could be anything silly as well. Don't worry. Because I just want to understand, like, what comes to our mind when we hear act or acceptance and commitment therapy. Like, obviously, when you like so the word, maybe there might be certain assumptions we come in, right? Like with CBT, we know, hey, it's with thought, something like that. Do you know what it stands? It's okay if you don't have any right answers, but we are just all hypothesizing what it stands for each of us. Yeah. Anything else anybody would like to? Don't worry, like I said, it could be silly as well. Yeah.
Ma'am, it can be
I think
same. All right, you go ahead.
Yeah, Chanchal, you said it can be.
staying in the present moment also, rather than worrying about the
Okay.
future, past. It's like accepting and committing even your present moments or someone's behavior, thoughts.
Okay. Okay. Thanks for sharing that. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I'm just hearing out right now. And let's keep all of our answers here. I see, and then we'll sort of discuss that as we go on in our journey. Yes. Anybody else? Like, come on. I know that you might be having answers. I know for sure you might be thinking something about this.
Ma'am, I think acceptance means accepting that transitions and problems are a part of life and we just need to commit towards it so that we can enhance our behavior properly and we can adapt it in our daily life.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for sharing that, Militia. Thank you. I made a note of it. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, Anshika says it's a form of therapeutic technique where we aim to encourage clients to be resilient and flexibility, accept their thoughts and feelings, and commit to change or maintain certain behaviors. Okay, okay, Anshika. I think Anshika has, let's say, more of what really act entails, more of like true. Although I would not use the word technique as such, it definitely does consist of a lot of techniques. So Anshika is not wrong in that. But okay, so now we have gathered like an overall understanding of, let's say, where we are sitting with when we talk about that. Okay. Okay. I want to ask all of you here who are present, is there anybody who believes that they have less pain and suffering in their life? Like, you can raise your hands and tell me in life. I asked if anybody feels, hey, I have less pain and suffering in my life. I need more. Is there anybody who feels like that? No, right? We all might have like a list. Oh my God, so much pain and suffering. So, yes, here it is. There is an approach that helps with all human conditions. Just being human is more than enough to, work. You don't have to fit into certain symptoms and DSM criteria or ICD criteria to, hey, I need help. So, all of us suffer from time to time. Okay, all of us have pain in our life. So this is an approach that looks at human condition, and as we do and as we dive that, I welcome all of you not to just sit here wearing the psychology student cap or a therapist cap or a psychologist cap, but at the same time being just human. Because if you're gonna help clients who are gonna suffer with being human, I hope you all connect here with being human. It's very important for us, to help our clients. Okay. Okay, so with that being said, let me share my screen and let us dive into understanding act today. Okay. Okay. If you can see my PPT, somebody just like let me know. Yeah. Okay. So yesterday I did give a brief intro about me, and so I'm not going to stay there. But I'll start with something that ACT community talks about, a quote. A quote, or it's not basically a quote, but it's basically serenity prayer. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. I think when I was asking all of you did use accepting certain things, changing certain things, mindfulness, accepting being in present moment and things like that. But what does accept and change stands in the act world? We would talk more about that as we go through. Okay, but this is like not being religious as we start with, but rather the serenity prayer has been sort of really used and talked about in ACT community, like as a way of talking and using ACT. So I am here starting with that. So we're going to look at 8 days today, starting with introduction to ACT. Okay, and what does this other things talks about, we'll see later. Okay, so why are you here? Okay, yesterday I asked you, all of you, what are your needs from this, again, I don't want answers, because I think that would be similar to yesterday, but at the same time I want all of you to keep in mind your answers. Some of you said, I'm here because I want to I hope my slides are moving, right? It is moving, right? It's with the slide. Why are you here, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, okay, great, great. Okay, so I was saying there are certain needs, there are certain values of yours or certain motivation that drive you to take this behavior or action of, okay, uh, taking your laptop, taking your phone on Sunday morning to sit at, let's say, your room or your bedroom or your living room, wherever you are, to click the join button in Zoho. That's an action that you took, okay, based on your values or your motivation, what drove you to it. So some of you said, hey, I want to learn more, learn more about psychology. Some of you said, I want to help adolescents, or I want to help people in general, that I see around me. So those are certain values and motivation that drive you to join here, and that's why you are here, and you took that action, of joining today. Okay, and those are very important, because values and motivation drives people towards action. And I want you to keep those values in the mind, and we will talk about in one of our classes later on, but just keep those values in the mind and keep this question in the mind: why am I here in this act training? Okay, not that you're not clear, but rather those values are really important for us. Okay, okay, so we will start with unpacking the definition of acceptance and commitment therapy. What is ACT? Okay, so Hayes, one of the pioneer of ACT, defines in his book Acceptance and Commitment Therapy as it is based on empirically supported principles aiming to improve psychological flexibility by leveraging the influence of mindfulness practice while utilizing evidence-based applied behavioral science. Yes, it's a very technical definition. Don't worry, we're here over to simplify, and let's break it down into construct. So it is basically meant to be a paragraph, but I sort of use bulletin points to break down the whole construct into sub construct for our understanding. Okay, so we'll start with the first construct. What it is saying: acceptance and commitment therapy is based on empirically supported principles. So what does that even mean? So ACT is based on natural science framework. Okay, so it is not on, okay, um I want to feel like some Buddhism or some philosophical lens, but rather based on science framework. It has empirically supported evidences, and it basically was developed by understanding of how does brain works, how do you and I interact with our brain, how does word works, words. Our brain is a word machine that releases a lot of words, right? Like right now, oh my god, this PPT looks very colorful. Oh my god, it's itching down there. I'm hungry. Or, oh, what's happening down there? I'm hearing certain noises, right? So it was very much interested in how science, basically science works, a lot of scientific principles. So it is based on that, and it's a very pragmatic approach. It is focused on creating change. Okay, that is why I said it comes from, it's called ACT and not ACT. Okay, and it is based on these two very important principles, like the theory of ACT. Okay, drives by functional contextualism and relational frame theory. Okay, and I want to sit and talk to you more about that, because this is the major what do I say, the theory behind ACT. Okay, these two understanding drives what ACT is. Like, it's the important theoretical framework and the principles of ACT. So I want to stay more on that. So I'm just going to stop sharing my screen and come back to more giving you evidences of science, like how does science support it. Okay, just a minute. Okay, okay. So first, there were two words: functional contextualism and relational frame theory. Okay, let's break it down for all of us. Okay, so functional contextualism is nothing but based on how does something functions in a given context. And over here, when we talk about functioning, we're more focused on behavior. Okay, and when we even say behavior, definitely overt behavior, what you see me doing, like let's say with hand, that is an overt behavior because you can see it. But also uh, private behavior. So what are private behaviors? Like with my thoughts, that you can't see, with my sensations, feeling, my private experiences that you can't see. Okay, so how does that function in a given context? Okay, we will simplify more with that. Okay, let's say I am sitting. Okay, there is a four-legged chair. Okay, four-legged chair, and as soon as I sit, one of the leg of the chair breaks down. Okay, so now I have a question for all of you. What would you call that chair has? One leg of a chair usually has four legs, right? That supports it. One leg breaks down as soon as, like, let's say I sit for some reason. Okay, so what would you call that chair as? How would you define that chair? Okay, let's say if somebody else wanted to sit there, what would you say, or how would you define that chair as? I'm just asking a simple question, no technical question. Just think about whatever comes to your mind, just say. Don't think if it's right or wrong. Still a chair, three-legged chair. Okay. Anshika saying still a chair, three-legged chair. Okay. What else? Who else would define, like, what would you call that chair as? Yes. Just give it a try. What would you call a chair that has one leg broken? Like one leg is not there. What would you call that chair? Take a moment. I'm still here. Ask yourself, what would you call a chair that has one?
It's a three leg only, but it's unstable somewhere.
Okay. Okay. So Priya has given a word, unstable. Okay, that's how she might define it. Okay. Anybody else? Damaged chair. Okay. Sunita's called it damaged chair, unstable. Okay. What else? And Anshika has called it three-legged chair as to define for her. A chair that could be fixed but broken right now. Okay. Okay. Yes, it could be fixed, Mansi, but I see like you've used the word broken chair. Broken chair. Yes, yes. Okay. Yeah, very simple question, right? Like I got it. Okay. Okay. So now let's take a pause. Now I want all of you to tell me, at least like everybody can answer. So if I get 5 responses, that's more than enough. Okay. 5 ways that you can use this broken chair. 5 ways. How can you use a three-legged chair that has one leg broken? 5 ways that you can use it. Okay. Any 5 ways. Think about one also. That's okay.
Then we have the option of fixing it again,
No.
or we are supposed to use with those 3 legs only.
Yes.
Well, I have seen kids just flip the chair and make it a slide most of the time. So that's what I have seen.
Okay, let's not talk about changing the chair anyway, but how will you use three-leg chair, Mansi? I know you were saying I will make a slide, but just think you can't fix it, but change it in any way. But how are you still gonna use? I really like how you're trying. So try it on. Still sit in the same train of thoughts. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Can I start one? Maybe that will give you all an idea. Okay. Okay. I will use the chair to prank somebody. I mean, that can also be used, right? I mean, I just asked you any use, any sort of use. I can prank somebody with that. Why not? That's how I will use.
Art piece.
Art piece, exactly. Yeah, it can be used as art display. Yeah, two. We found two right now. Two uses of a chair that has 3 legs. Okay. What else? Use as a decorative item. Yes. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yes. Anshika saying hanging dirty laundry. Yeah. Why not? Okay. 4. One more. I'm looking for one more. If Yeah, to add more, I can let's say if you're just talking about the uses of chair, it can be used by jokers or comical person to perform an act. Okay, or it can help carpenters learn about you know wood and broken pieces. Okay, and like Priya said, it can be used as an art display. So yeah, or I can use that 3 leg chair to learn balancing, right? Motor coordination, balancing, right? So that can also be another use. Okay. So now my question is still the chair considered broken and damaged when you can do so many things with that? Because I use the chair with so many things right now. I mean, I used as in you all described. I did not even like. I added one or two examples. You all described so many uses of the chair. Is this chair still broken, damaged, maladaptive, whatever you want to call it? No, right? I mean, no, because now the function of the chair changed, right? So not we did not change yeah just a second, I'm reading what Anshika has started. We have harnessed its functional capacity, exactly. So because the function is what in act we are interested in, not the form of behavior. Okay. So the same way, when we talk about functional contextualism, we are trying to understand what is the function of that chair in the given context, right? So if it was sitting, then the chair is like, hey, useless. Okay, like we were saying, broken, damaged. We gave different words: maladaptive, broken, damaged, no use. But as soon as I asked what are the 5 different functions you can use with that chair, all of you came with a different function, and you did not, and then it did not we did not define the chair as like broken, maladaptive, because we found lot of uses with that, right? So with the same being said, lot of the therapeutic approach that came before act looked at your internal brain and the word machine and the cognition or your external behavior with a mechanistic lens. What is mechanistic lens? Mechanistic lens is just like mechanical parts. Okay, you're figuring out what are the damaged goods or damaged parts, and you're trying to fix it. Okay, so that's how psychology evolved, with a mechanistic view and mechanistic lens, trying to look at what is maladaptive thoughts, what is maladaptive emotions, anxiety, negative feelings, negative emotions, maladaptive behavior, like drinking, cutting, and all of that. So you might ask, okay, then you're saying that is very pleasurable. You might ask, okay, Shubha, then what you say, then that is really nice and really enjoyable. Then I would say no. Definitely they're causing distress. But when it comes to act does not look at your thoughts, your feelings, your sensation, or your overt action, whether that is private behavior that we just talked about, let's say feeling, sensation, or urges, memories, or your overt action as adaptive, maladaptive, right behavior, wrong behavior, nothing like that. Okay, but rather how does this behavior functions in a given context, and what is the context that we're looking for, whether that is helpful uh, in me leading a life that I want. Okay, that is a valuable life, whether this behavior helps me leading a life that I want or it doesn't. Like for example, when I'm switching on a TV, whether when I'm fighting with my thoughts, whether this thought is helping me right now to lead a life that I want or not. This is very beautiful about act, because act does not help you fit into a rigid structure. Okay, it believes that, hey, all of you are human, thoughts are human, feelings are human, sensations are human, urges are human, taking action is also human, behavior is also part of human. And suddenly certain schools of thought define that as, this is right, this is like problematic thoughts, this is unproblematic thoughts. But rather, okay, so I again over here, we are not trying gonna defend okay, that this is over here, the motto is not to criticize. Okay, but rather when we actually understand that there is a different way of looking at your thoughts, rather than problematic or unproblematic, and just as a human condition, that we all have thoughts, we all have feelings, we all have sensation. But act understands how does that sensation functions in a given context, how does this behavior, because this is so subjective for all of us at a given time, at a given moment. So that is the beauty about act. It is not rigid, okay, this is right, this is wrong, and put you in the box. But rather it understands functional contextualism, how does this functions in a given context. So a lot of clients that when they come to therapy believes that they're broken, there's something wrong with them, right? I am faulty, I have faulty thoughts. But act does not look at that way, and that is what differentiates act. Okay, and that's what I want you all to understand, the functional contextualism over here. How does something functions in a given context, when we talk about functions, your private experiences or your overt behavior. So that is what act is interested in. How does it serve you for a short term, and how does it serve you for a long term? When you cut your hand, or when you starve your body, when we talk about eating disorders like anorexia nervosa or binging and purging, those are overt behavior. Right now I'm even talking about just overt behavior. So how does this function for a short term? Maybe short term it does give you pressure, pleasure, or relieves pain when you drink alcohol. But on a long term, does this help you lead a life that you really want or desire? Right? Oftentimes no, right? So yeah, that is what act is more interested in, that is what functional contextualism is. Okay, so imagine act is like a car. Okay, you can drive without knowing the engine parts, you don't have to be an expert in engine without knowing. But we all want over here to understand the engine, so that tomorrow if the car breaks down, we know. And these engines are functional contextualism and RFT, which is relational frame theory. Okay, so now coming to relational frame theory. What is relational frame theory? So you've understood functional contextualism. Now we'll go to RFT. Okay, so RFT is nothing but behavioral. It derived from behavioral school of thought, Skinner, and more understanding how does some your thoughts and language works. Basically your how do you and I interact with our language, with our cognition, you know? So that is what RFT is all about. Okay. So again, like I'll break down for you. It is more complicated. They are all a world in itself. But because I want you all to understand that, we can all just go to, okay, what are different act techniques or all of that, but it's really important for us to understand the base. Where is act coming from? Okay, like the engine is really important. So I want all of you to be aware of where act derives. Okay. Okay, so now coming to relational frame theory. Okay, so now let's start with an example like we did with the chair. Okay, so that helps you all understand better. Okay. Okay, so the English word for lemon is lemon, like I said. I mean, you all know. I don't have to necessarily say. But the French word for lemon is citron. Okay. And let's say the Italian word for lemon is citrona, which is which might not be the word, but let's assume that. Okay. So now I have question for you. What is the English word for citron? Did you all understand? So I gave you two relation. One is the English word for sorry, the French word. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah. What Anshika said is lemon. Yeah. So what I just asked you was what is the like I said, the French word for lemon is citron. Okay. So I asked you exactly the opposite. Like what is the English word for citron? And like Anshika said, it's lemon. Okay. Did you just see? You just formed a relation. Okay. So then, which means the English word for citron is lemon, right? You just formed that relational network, right? Just see how it took flip of a second for Anshika to just answer that. Okay. And now when I ask you, what is the French word for citruna? Which is citron, like I said, which is citron basically. Okay. So don't worry if you were not able to remember. It's not about remembering, but it's about, um, just see how your brain forms a relational network. When I just gave it one network, it was able to connect with other relational networks, right? So you might wonder, hey, what's a big deal about it, Shubha? Thank you for letting me know this fact about how my brain works. But how does this context is important when we understand the cognition and human brain, as we talk about over here. Okay. So friends, it is important. Um, um, I want to let you all know, because as you and I started and were born in the world, all of you. Okay, so now I want to take a moment to tell you a story. Okay, I'll come back to that later about being born. That will help in the context of what I'm telling right now. Okay. Okay, so I want to tell you about like a story of like one summer day, one sunny day, where I just purchased this, like 1 kgs of lemon. Okay, and these lemon were, round and pulpy, and it had those dimples, like you see that holes, like the tiny dimples or the grid, and they were like very big ripe lemon. Okay, and when I took all those lemon on the slab of my kitchen, and then I took the slab board and I took the knife, and as soon as I cut the lemon into two, I saw the lemon and it was like pulpy, it was, and it smelled the citrusy smell that we talk about. Okay, and then I cut more slices of it, And as I cut the slices of the lemon, and I just took one slice of lemon, okay, as I cut it and chop it into different slices, I took one slice of lemon, I just put it in my mouth, and I just, try to suck the juice out of the lemon. Okay, so this was one story of one summer afternoon of me cutting lemons. Okay, so now I want to ask you, as soon as I narrated this, okay, how many of you could maybe connect with the smell of lemon, could see or have the image of lemon? How many of you could maybe had your mouth water salivating, uh, how many of you thought about lemon pie, lemon cake, or something related to lemon, or your memories with lemon, you know? Yes, I see. I see. Yeah. So we have Anshika, we have Gagna, we had Chanchil, we have Sunita. Okay. Thing and Melisha as well, right? And guess why? Why did because there's no real lemon in the room. Did I show you a real lemon? No. Okay. But when I use the word lemon, it activated. We call this as private events. Okay. What is private events? Nothing but when it activated certain smell, taste, image, private experience, lot of private experience. Okay, so with relation to the word lemon, it activated different relational networks for all of us. Okay, and imagine all of us could connect with a different memory of lemon. Sometimes you had lemon juice, or the smell of lemon, the taste of lemon, right? You connected with your experience. Okay, so just look at the power the brain machine has, so you and I have millions of relational networks, you know right now. Can you believe that? We just talked about lemon, where we had like 4 or 5 relational networks, or more than that also. You could have had one or two that activated you with the word lemon. Okay, so just the word lemon can connect with physical feelings. Maybe some feelings. Okay, maybe some warm, happy feelings could have come up for all of you, or maybe some bad experiences where it was very sore and you're like yuck. So it might be a disgusting feeling, or whatever it is. So it activated different sensations, it activated different feelings, it activated different intrusive images that came up for all of us. Maybe at our home, maybe somewhere outside, maybe some cartoon that you saw of lemon. So did you just see that just one word activated different relational networks for all of us, right? And that is the power of our brain, or how our mind functions. Okay, it can just activate the experience. And the and but the fact is, there's no real lemon existing in the room right now as we're talking about, right? So this is very powerful. And the way that you all connected with the different lemon with the word citron with the word citruna with the word lemon with citron, right? The different relational networks. Okay, you all connected. But back then, when you were a child, lemon would just be a syllable or sound, right? Nothing but lemon, lemon. When we say it repeated, lemon, 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 just see, it just became a jumbling sound. Okay, and when you and I were born, okay, when we were child, what we used to have, like a book. Okay, our mom and dad, sort of, when our teacher associated the sound with with the image of apple, the sound of and then the image of tiger with the rowling sound. So now there was an image associated with apple, and then with tiger there was a sound. And then when we did that sound, and the teacher and mom would be like, good job, good job. And then they associated the image of cow with the real cow. So the experience of the real cow with the word cow, which was just like a sound, cow. And then more, like the sound of the animal with the real experiences. Okay, and that's how, my friend, you and I form relational network. and then the words became certain cues for your internal experience. Like for example, a child when it's hungry, so okay, uh water, pani, like something, the child associates, okay, this is with my internal cue of hunger, or I want thirst. So the child started connecting the five senses that we all were talking about lemon with the words. Okay, previously when we were born it was just syllables and sound, but did you see how our brain can form millions of relational networks now as an adult? But back then it started with one relational network. Okay. The word apple, with how apple looks like, the image of apple. With the word, tiger, how does tiger sounds like? So much so that right now as an adult, you don't even have to have a real lemon to know what lemon tastes like. And but those relational networks are activated, right? For all of us. Okay, but at the end of the day, that is just a syllable or sound, right? So easy to say that, oh, lemon is just a syllable or sound that I was just saying, but it activated a lot of relational networks, right, for all of us. Okay, but now I want to ask you, now you might be like, hey Shubha, okay, good, this is really nice to know how brain function, but how does this have to do with us learning act and this understanding of RFT with our clients or with our world? I want to tell you that there is understanding. There is definitely an understanding, and I'll tell you how. What is the understanding? So, as an adult, as you all grew, you associated the word bad girl, bad person, bad boy with what? You activated the relational networks of shame. You activated the feeling of shame. You activated, let's say, the word, if you associated the word life, okay, the word life can have lot of your areas, right? Like your work, your family, your education, your physical health, your spiritual, a lot of different areas when we talk about life. And when you are associated with life as with another word, awful, okay, remember what are the relational networks that it can bring up, the feelings, the memories. Imagine what all memories it can bring up. Life is awful, you know when we sound, they are just different word. Life, awful, is, but when we form the relational network, our brain, it does not even need to have an experience right now. It can just bring up a lot of relational networks that you have with associated with the word awful, the beliefs, the sensations, just like the word lemon, right? And oftentimes our clients come in therapy with a lot of these relational networks. Life is awful, specifically clients who are depressed, you know and as such, so the brain does not even need to right now experience something awful, but the client who are depressed right now can feel shame, can feel certain memories that are coming up, popping up, certain intrusive image, certain sensations in the body, like the gut wrenching feeling, numb feeling, and things like that. Do you see, this is how much powerful a brain, a word machine is, right? So how our language and our words play a role. Okay, so I hope this helps you understand what RFT is and functional contextualism is. They're really important, and we'll see how do we as a psychotherapist using ACT plays a role or work with that. Okay, but I hope this is clear for you, functional contextualism and relational frame theory. Just give a thumbs up so I know you're with me. Okay. Okay, okay, great, great. Okay, okay. So you're with me. Okay, great. So this is really important to understand, because oftentimes what happens, people in ACT community, they just jump into, I don't know if any of you are aware of, but in ACT, we use a lot of metaphors and experiential exercises, okay? And a lot of people just dive and jump into just learning about metaphors and experiential exercises. Yes, you can work with clients with that, but unless you understand the theory or crux behind how, what is the theory that drives act, like the engine of the act, you cannot that's a really good understanding, because sometimes if an engine gets wrong, okay, how to work. So yes, now I'll share my screen to continue more along the lines. Okay, so I'm just looking at time, and I think I have to keep that in mind. We still have uh, an hour to go, but still. Okay. Yeah, okay. Coming back. So, yeah, I hope you've understood functional contextualism and relational frame theory. And acts train motors to reduce suffering and improve quality of life. Remember, acts motors not, guys, you will not believe, acts motors not to reduce symptoms, which is, motive lot of, therapeutic approach. They want to reduce the symptoms, they want to reduce negative emotions, they want to reduce this and that, but acts motors to reduce suffering. Okay. And improve quality of life, and that is the mode of act. And when we talk about empirically supported evidences, act has numerous randomized controlled trials conducted with different psychological disorders like depression, OCD, PTSD, substance abuse, chronic pain, binge eating disorder, anorexia nervosa, social anxiety disorders. You can take on different and different clinical and non-clinical concerns as well. It has evidences for work performance, improving performance, adjusting at school, sports performance. So it has and reduce increasing people's quality of life as well, like life satisfaction in general. So clinical concern, non-clinical concern, it has evidence. And one of the first study that was done at 2000 by Stephen Hayes, one of the pioneers in ACT. Okay, so he sort of conducted one randomized controlled trial on psychotic disorder where there were 80 participants, which was randomly divided into controlled and experimental group. And what sort of happened over there was, one group was given treatment as usual, which included psychoeducation, and definitely meds. The other group was given treatment as usual, which is psychoeducation and meds. But apart from that, they were also given, ACT, 4-week ACT. Training, or ACT intervention. I mean, more than training, I would want to call it ACT intervention. And then they measured three things. Okay, three dependent variables that they wanted to check. One was rehospitalization, and they found that people with ACT, like the experimental group who got ACT as an intervention, took a very long time. After the 4-week intervention, it started like a clock. Hey, now when are they going to visit hospital back again? Right? Obviously, as a clinician, we want people to function well and not visit hospital back again, right? That would be a good sign that the intervention is working great, right? So they figured out that people with ACT, sort of the experimental group, had less hospital visitation, and after a very long time, so they followed up, okay, compared to the control group that just got treatment as usual. Second is symptom symptomology, which is the hallucination, delusions when we talk about. Okay, here they figured out people with ACT actually had more symptoms. So, as a clinician or as a therapist or psychology student, you might ask, oh, then that means ACT. That's worrisome that people who have ACT as an, ACT as an intervention, they have more hallucination and more delusion, So, that's the catch over here. Maybe that is what ACT is not doing. ACT is not focused on reducing the symptoms, but rather how people relate to those symptoms, and that is where ACT varies a lot. But the third aspect, which is symptom believability. So people with the experimental group of ACT believe less in those hallucination or delusion, although they had those hallucination or delusions, and yeah, I mean, I know you might be like, it's so difficult, but how they related to those voices in their head, you know varied. That's what ACT does. So it is more focused on reducing suffering and improving the quality of life, because when people did not visit hospitals, they were more focused on living the life they want out in the world, right? That is what we want. So apart from that, there are a lot of studies with depression where there's a control group of CBT, where there's an experimental group of ACT, and they compared that, and they found ACT was either equivalent effective to CBT when they even followed up, or it was some studies also showed ACT was better than CBT. Okay, now it's a matter of debate. There are a lot of studies, and yes, and it showed repeated evidence for different other clinical and non-clinical issues. If you actually go to Association of Contextual Behavioral Science, which I'll share the website later, you'll have lot of thousands and thousands of studies to support with different clinical disorders and non-clinical concerns, how ACT is an evidence-based treatment. So, and it has repeated evidence that it really helps with people with different chronological challenges, disorders, and non-clinical concern as well. So, I'm here to basically vouch in front of all of you that ACT is really one of the most, evidence-based supported treatment, and yeah, why you should actually have a look into it. I mean, I think all of us do want for our clients to have an improved quality of life and to reduce suffering. So yeah, why not? Okay, so ACT's aim is to improve psychological flexibility. So when you even think about the word flexible, right, like, hey, when I talk about muscle flexibility, we just think about stretching our body and being flexible, right? So ACT's main motto, the goal is to increase psychological flexibility. And what they've figured out in all of these randomized controlled trials and any time that they've used ACT is when people had higher score on psychological flexibility, then that meant reduce in psychopathology and increase in quality of life. So people who scored higher on psychological flexibility is a very 21st century term. It's a very new term in the world of ACT, being psychologically flexible, you know. We all have heard, the word mentally flexible, or, like, physically flexible, be stretch and warm and be physically flexible. But ACT is more focused on, hey, building your psychological flexibility. Okay, and the more psychologically flexible you are, that is that they've measured using acceptance and action questionnaire, which is one form of you can measure psychological flexibility. They figured out people, there was like a buffer against people having psychopathology. It basically reduced, and there was an increase in quality of life. And I think that is what we all want for our clients, right? Like, hey, have no like act as a buffer for mental health disorder and reduce psychopathology and increase quality of life, right? And like I said, ACT is not about reduction in symptomology. ACT is not focused on that. ACT basically targets human conditions, your feelings, your sensations, your um anything, urges, impulses, so it is more focused on human condition and human suffering. So which means it's also a trans diagnostic model, which means it it was not developed to address, okay, this disorder. Like, we know DBT was developed firstly to address, bipolar, sorry, borderline personality disorder, I'm sorry, and CBT was first developed to working with, excuse me, depression. But ACT, on the other hand, was developed to work with human conditions. As long as you and I are human and you and I are suffering, it works with that. So it's a trans diagnostic model that can work with any clinical disorder, any non-clinical disorder. Okay. So now, what is psychological flexibility? Okay, psychological flexibility, according to Moran, is the capacity to contact the present moment. Yes, a lot of you did say that the present moment when I asked all of you about ACT, right? So yes, it does focus on contacting the present moment. While also aware of being aware of your thoughts and emotions without trying to change those private experience or be adversely controlled by them, and depending upon the situation, persisting in or changing behavior in the pursuit of values and goals. Okay, so this is little complicated and tricky definition. I will break down for you, but I'm just checking if there's any questions or doubts over here on the chat box. No, right? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Great. Great. Okay. Okay. Sorry. Sorry. We'll continue. And if you do have questions, just make a note of it. Okay. In the end, we will discuss. Okay. So, okay, don't worry. I will break down the definitions for us about psychological flexibility really sounds like a very complicated definition for us. It is complicated when you don't know it, but the more we understand it, it becomes simple. So DJ Moran is like an act therapist, very renowned act therapist. So he defines it first, the capacity to contact the present moment, right? So act is not focusing on present moment, okay, because it is cool or because it is zen, okay, but rather the fact that present is when the behavior occurs, okay. You might be like, okay, behavior can occur, I will behave 5 minutes later, okay, but turns out after 5 minutes, after you keep it an alarm, okay, after 5 minutes, what is that moment? It is now, right? So we can take action in the present moment, and like I said, act is more focused on behavioral approach, it's taking action, okay. So that's why contacting the present moment is important, while also being aware of your thoughts and emotion without trying to change them, okay. So over here we're not trying to, like in CBT, okay, fight with our thoughts, challenge, maladaptive, adaptive, but basically form a different relation to our thoughts and emotion, okay, being aware of them without trying to change them. And how that we will do it, we'll learn in day 2, we will learn in day 3, we will learn in day 4 of our training, okay. How do we do that, okay, in act, how do we do that then, okay. And depending upon the situation, persisting in or changing behavior in the pursuit of values and goals, okay. This about that, I'll give you an example with a picture that's attached over here, okay, which is the hockey goalie metaphor, okay. So I want to look at you and talk about that, okay. So okay, so imagine there is I mean, in India there's a famous sports cricket that we all are aware of, okay, but the image that you saw was like of a hockey goalie, which is ice hockey, okay, which is not so popular in India, but it is abroad. So let's take, this is your first act metaphor that I'm using, I mean the second, since I used the car and the engine one. So okay, coming back, the hockey goalie metaphor. Okay, so imagine if you see this hockey goalie players, okay, this is ice hockey, so I hope you have an idea about it, like a, at least an image how you see people playing ice hockey. So imagine you see this sports player of hockey, okay, and before starting the match, they'll start stretching their body like this, taking one leg forward and then bending the knees, and then taking another leg forward and then bending the knees, and then they do splits, okay, and then they do this and this. So they're stretching their body, which means they are changing the behavior, right? And you might ask and go to that person, and definitely sounds like psychological flexibility, right? Changing behavior, I mean the word flexible in itself sounds like, hey, changing the behavior, that is what all of you all told me in the beginning when I asked you the definition as well, okay. So now if you go to this person and you might ask, why are you changing your behavior a lot, like doing splits, like one stretched leg forward, one knee forward. And if you ask the sports player of hockey, he would say, well, I'm doing this because this action is based on my value. And I would ask, what value is this action based? And this person might say, hey, this is based on sportsmanship, this is based on team play, I want to be a team player today, support my team. And second, this puts food on my table, I want to serve my family, that is really important to me, that is one of my value. So when I change my behavior today, which is like stretching my body, that helps me to like perform better, obviously, because when they have to pass the punk, they have to stretch their hands and legs, right? Imagine the hockey skating and as such. So this helps him to actually serve his values, okay. So now secondly, I would let's say they play the match, and the goalkeeper of the when they throw the punk, right? Obviously it has to reach that goal net, right? That's there. If any of you don't cannot imagine ice hockey, just think about Chuck the India movie. Okay, at least I think you would have the image of being thrown at the net, right? You remember the last scene, and where they had to score. I mean, they had to. Yeah, like stay there. So you at least know hockey, okay, if you watch Chuck the India, right? So there's a net and there's a goalkeeper as well, okay? So imagine if the same goalkeeper is not changing the behavior, it's like sticking over the net, okay? He's the goalkeeper, okay? And this time it's very rigid, and he's like, he's not changing his action, okay, and he's staying very rigid, okay? And when the punk comes in, many of us would be like, okay, might hide ourselves, because imagine if that hits us, okay, on the eye, on the chest, or on the in spite of wearing all the safety nets or anything, it is still gonna, it's still not a pleasant experience. Many of us want to dodge, many of us want to maybe run or not face that, okay? But if we ask the same this hockey goalie player who started the game with being a lot of flexible behavior, but when it came to at the goalkeeping, that stayed persistent, that so that the punk hits him and does not hit the net, okay? So if now when you ask the same hockey goalie player, hey, why are you very consistent with your behavior, why didn't you move, and he or she would say that it is because based on my values, I still value teamwork, I value sportsmanship, I value feeding my family, putting food on their table, okay? So did you see the values remain the same, the context varies, okay? So yeah, so that is also psychological flexibility, when you persist on a certain behavior based on your value, okay? So this might even include, imagine as a speaker today, I am very scared of delivering act to you, okay? And maybe my urge is like, oh, run away, just cancel the meeting, blah blah blah. Imagine, but I'm still persisting on my value, still joining the act training program, still staying with you, okay, still delivering the lecture based on my values, because maybe I love psychology and that is my value, or I love spreading awareness. Maybe my value is like that people create change, that there's more change, there's more awareness about mental health, and that is my value. And so in spite of all the anxiety, in spite of all the trembling and shaking in my body, I still persist on my value, even though it is uncomfortable. So this is what psychological flexibility is. Sometimes you can resist, sometimes you can change your behavior, sometimes you can stay persistent, and it is about contacting the present moment without trying to change your thoughts and emotion, not fighting with them, and still staying consistent, or changing your behavior based on value and based on context, right? So yeah, it is complicated definition, but don't worry, as we go about it, you will understand psychological flexibility is very cool. You and I are going to be more psychologically flexible as we go by weeks and weeks, okay? So we are not just going to talk about psychological flexibility. You and I are going to build psychological flexibility as we go by through this training, okay? Got it? So I hope wants us to connect with that present moment, okay? And mindfulness is nothing but paying attention on purpose in the present moment and non-judgmentally, okay? So many of you might be aware of mindfulness concept. We'll go further deep within as we go. But yeah, mindfulness increases psychological flexibility, but there's lot of amazing benefits of staying in the present moment. It helps in it decreases emotional reactivity, it increases your immune function, it increases your connection with intuition, morals, it increases your cognitive flexibility, it increases your working memory. So mindfulness has an enormous benefit. So acts as we unravel and break down the definition, it does involve people to learn mindfulness by leveraging the influence of mindfulness practice. So act is not somebody who came up with mindfulness first. Mindfulness, like derived from Eastern philosophy, and it was always there. But why we use it? Because we want people to change, okay, and behaviors occurs in the present moment, and hence becoming aware of yourself, and mindfulness really helps with that. So contacting present moment is important, because the present moment is where the behavior occurs, okay. So yes, mindfulness increases psychological flexibility. So while utilizing the fourth part of the definition, while utilizing evidence-based applied behavioral science, so ACT, like I said, has lot of evidences in the literature, specifically when we talk about in the Journal of Clinical Society, the psychology divisions 12, which is nothing but the subdivision in APA for clinical psychology. So there we find that ACT has evidences. It when they talk about evidence-based treatment, ACT has like five: ACT for OCD, ACT for anxiety disorder, ACT for chronic pain, ACT for psychosis, ACT for depression. So it does have evidences. So now the question is, okay, what about the rest of the 70? So what are you telling me? So ACT says, hey, use them as well. Use those as well in your treatment. Imply them as well. So it believes that use other evidence-based treatment like exposure and response prevention, like behavioral sciences that we talk about, flooding, systematic desensitization, assertiveness skill training. Okay, so that's why ACT is very trans-diagnostic model. You can implement it with other therapeutic approach as well. So that is what ACT believes in. Okay, so yeah, moving forward, just a small history. Don't worry, I'm not going to go too clinical. So when we talked about 50s and 60s, where classical conditioning and operant conditioning were more prominent in that first wave of behavioral school of thought, their overt behavior was only focused on, okay, we were like rats and robots, like people were thought of like rats and robots. You can just, there's a consequences, there's reinforcement, and that's what we are. And then came the second wave in 70s and 80s, where more focus was on the thought aspect. The second wave of behavioral school of thought, where thought was focused more on. And what is this school of thought, which included CBT, REBT. So their thought played a very important role that influences people's behaviors and emotions. But ACT comes with third wave, which is like more focused on applying mindfulness, and yeah, so that is where ACT comes in with other schools of thoughts: TBT, MBCT, MBSR, which is mindfulness based stress reduction, mindfulness based cognitive therapy. So yeah, it comes from the third wave. And I want you all to know that although ACT became very popular, but its conceptualization started back in 1970s. And now you might be wondering, okay, then why ACT was not put out then? Why it took so long, 2000, this decade, for people to actually realize, ACT exist, okay, that ACT is one of the approach. Why it became famous later? So this was something that was asked to Stephen Hayes in interview as well. So these are the three pioneers who wrote book on ACT in 1999, published in 1999: Stephen Hayes, Kirk Stroschel, and Kelly Wilson. Okay, so Stephen Hayes and his colleagues published a first book. They brought out ACT approach in 1999. Why so late if ACT started its conceptualization way back, although it gained its popularity later? Why so? Because Stephen Hayes believed that it's not that it did not have its theory. So back then, any approach to come, first what happens is the therapist works with the client, okay? And when they are applying practically, and then they notice certain pattern or certain way that is really helping people, okay? And then they take that frame of reference or that techniques or that, and goes and do research on that, okay? Then they form a theory, why is something really helping people or why is something not helping people, okay? And based on that, then they go and work on theory, and then they do more research and apply that on thousands and thousands of population to build a theoretical framework, okay? And that's how any approaches come, okay? So there is some therapist or psychotherapist that see something is working out or something is not working out, and then they go back to researching more on that. Okay, so did Stephen Hayes. Okay, and Stephen Hayes' journey started very personally. Okay, for him, uh, because he was someone who was suffering from panic attacks, the suffering of human condition as we talk about. Okay, and from his own human suffering came this approach. Okay, and it's so beautiful. I'm going to share all of you one TED talk. I want all of you to look at that TED talk, and we're going to discuss on, next week on Saturday when we meet. Okay, but I want all of you to look at, because the way he describes about his life journey, which is so authentic, it's so beautiful. I wish I could just do justice to that, as a therapist, as I'm sort of orienting towards act. But I will share with you the link of that video. Just watch it. Okay, everybody has to watch it. Okay, because it's so beautiful how he orients about act. It's really beautiful. He talks about his own personal journey of panic attacks, and how it was so scary, and how it led him to move to act. So I'm going to share that link to all of you. But just know that the founder or the pioneers of act approach themselves suffer, themselves connected with the human conditions. So I request all of you, as every week and every class we're all going to dive into act. I want all of us to get connected with our own human being. Being human means having thoughts, having feelings, having sensations, having urges, having action. So I want all of you all to connect with that. Okay, so what Stephen Hayes said, that why it did not become popular later, or why he did not bring that out earlier, because um, he believed ACT wouldn't have survived the scrutiny of the science people, hey, in psychology community back then, because it needed more research. Okay, it needed more data. So because he says now people go back and peel the layers and they realize it goes back to 1960s. Like there's so much of evidence, so much of research to be proven, so now they have strong foundations for people today to even question. Okay, so that's why he says it came later. And act is more than just tools and techniques. It's more about a way of living, a process of living, which is very subjective for each of us. It does not have a rigid rules. Okay, neither for that. So yeah, I've written certain other pioneers like that. Russ Harris is a great teacher of act. So if you've ever heard of act, his name would come up a lot. Emma McAdam, Daniel J. Moran, Dr. Jessica. So yeah, these are like few pointers that also inspired me in my learning for act. So now why act? I mean, right now you've gotten a lot of evidences. It helps with clinical, non-clinical. It's a trans-diagnostic model. It can complement with other evidence-based treatment. It addresses human condition. And if you want someone to live a meaningful life, to rich and meaningful life, I think act is one of the approaches you can dive in. So now when we were talking about psychological flexibility, how do we increase psychological flexibility? Okay, it is by these 6 components, okay, that helps people build psychological flexibility. Although it is hexagon, but I want you to imagine like a circle. Okay, and this is the model Stephen Hayes originally gave in his book. That, do you see, every dot connects with the other dot, you know so which means they are all equally important. So if you work along any of the component, you can be more psychological flexible. That is so cool about this. And all of the 6 matters. So it's not like, oh, this is first important and then comes this. So it's not a linear model. So linear model are like this, like in behavioral school of thought, where we say, okay, first is antecedent, what happens before the behavior occurs, right? And then there's consequences, right, after the behavior. Or in REPT, we saw there's an activating event, then there's a belief, there's emotional consequences, there's a disputation, where we dispute the thoughts, and there's an effective new belief. So those are linear model. But psychological flexibility, sorry, my slides are, yeah. Sorry, sorry. The slides were not moving. So yeah, just a second. I'm sharing my screen again. Uh, we'll just wind up in 15 more minutes. Don't worry. We're just very near to the end. Uh, yeah, okay. So I hope you can see the screen. Yeah, okay. But this model is more circular. There's no linear, okay, after this that comes, but rather each component is important. Each component is equidistant from the other. Imagine it like circle, like although it's hexagon. So yeah, everything is important. It is also called as hexaflex model. Why? Because six, right? Six components, hence hex and flex, because or working through any of the component increases psychological flexibility. So that is why it's called hexaflex model. Okay, so these six components are acceptance, contact with the present moment, values, committed action, self as a context, cognitive diffusion. And throughout our journey we would see how, hey, if increasing psychological flexibility really helps, and I want to really learn how to work with these six components, right? How do we move through each component to help build psychological flexibility for us, for our clients as well, right? So okay, so in act community, now there are other models that also, helps with building psychological flexibility, but we are going to stick with the original model. Okay, but there are other models like DNAV model, mindful action model, which was given by DJ Moran, act matrix model. Again, they're the same but focusing on psychological flexibility, building a value life, but we're going to stick with hexaflex model, okay, for our training. Okay, so okay, so as an act therapist you have to model the model of flexibility, which means, hey, if you're going to build psychological flexibility, we are not going to have structure like, okay, in first session we're going to focus on self as a context, and the next session will focus on value. No, you have to connect with the present moment, like model the model of mindfulness, where your client is now, what is a function in a given context, right? Functional contextualism, understand your client, and then understand which component would your client need, what is your client needing, right? So you have to be flexible and adaptive based on your client's need. Inherently they believe people have empathy skills. When so as an act therapist you're supposed to have empathy skills, self-compassion skills, a collaborative stance where we're going to work with the client. Okay, self-disclosure you can, because we're talking about human conditions. Like one of the point is, Stephen Hayes self-discloses, so we can self-disclose appropriately and all of that. I'm not going to go more on empathy skills or self-compassion skills over here, although you might see that being implemented as and when I speak indirectly. You would see that as I even share my cases with you all, as we would look at different components, how we would be working. We'll do a lot of experiential exercise. We're going to do a lot of metaphors together. There's a lot of practical orientation. We will see where all of these do imply. But yeah, and a psychologically flexible therapist is likely to be more effective. Okay, so hey, if you're gonna help someone with human suffering and human life, you better be psychologically flexible, which means I hope all of us, as we go through all the six components, we are going to imply on ourselves. Okay, we are going to learn to be more psychological flexible, because that will help us to with our clients. Okay, so I hope these are like the prime conditions that they believe like therapists to be, to help as an act therapist to help clients. Okay, so I think with that being said, we come to the end of day one. So based on that, based on our discussion today, I have like created a Google Classroom for us, and that's where it will just take like 10 or 15 minutes. But I want all of you to connect with one of the prompts that I'm sharing over there based on each day. Okay, so today we finished day one. Okay, so for you to do that one activity, it would just take 15 minutes or hardly 10 minutes as such. Okay, but why we are doing this? Because I don't want all of you to forget that. Okay, that okay, these are like, okay, I have to do this 1 month training and then move on. It's very easy to, not I mean, forget or not imply. But I want this to sink into the deeper levels, okay? And with that being said, I want you all to like have these prompts where you reflect back, okay, what I learned there, and you just like connect and just answer one or two questions, whatever that is there. It would be very simple, one word answer like riddles, or two-line answer like a prompt. Okay, what did you understand? A very simple 2 3 lines that you have to write. Okay, but why we are doing this? Because I want all of you to sync act concepts. I want you all to really connect with the human self and building psychological flexibility as we talk about. Okay, so I'll share about that link in the Google Classroom. And with that being said, this week, just notice your suffering, notice your human conditions, and please do watch the video of Stephen Hayes that I'll share about, and just reflect on the prompts that I share on Google Classroom. Okay, it will be really good to hear out your answers and how you think, so that we sink in the concepts deeply. Okay, so let's take just one quick minute to uh, see how you are sitting with our discussion today. you know what are your reflections, what are your takeaway, or it could be just a feeling that you're sitting with, because act is really new for you. So how is it for you to understand act today? Yes. Are you able to like follow the pace with me? Were you able to understand act? How does act feel for you? Like as you're just getting to know, like today you just put your feet into like, hey, what is this like in the river? You just put your feet, your toes, dipped it little bit to understand act. So how is that for you today? Like, or is there anything that stood out for you? Yes, please. Gagna, Sunita, Anshika, Chanchal, Mansi, Melisha, Priya, please. Yeah, okay, okay. Yeah, for Priya, it's like some new learning, right? Yeah, we're learning something different today. Exactly. Maybe really different from other models, right? So, yeah. What about others? Okay, so Anshika is sharing that I could connect with the goals of ACT. Honestly, of the few modalities I've studied, I felt it was more humane. I know, right? Guys, I want you all to like watch the video of Stephen Hayes as he talks about. You're just gonna love him, you're just gonna fall in love with him. So we're gonna be more human here. We just want to be more human. We want to connect with human self. So, like Anshika said, and Sunita is adding, I understood that we have to build psychological flexibility so that we can handle challenges and still live a meaningful life. So true, so true. And how of it, we're going to start from next week. Okay, from next week onwards, I we are going to build psychologically flexible therapy. And next week, for next week's session, I want ice cubes, 2 ice cubes to be there. Okay, keep it in the fridge. I will also leave a message in the group, but I want ice cubes to be there. Okay, 2 ice cubes. Be ready. Okay, keep it in the fridge ready. Okay, for our next class. Okay, every time it's CBT, REBT, Gestalt, but today something new. So happy. Thank you, Priya. I know, right? Yeah. And Gagna said, yes, ma'am, it was great session learning new things. Mansi added, understood the roots or the base of ACT today. Thank you. Melisha added, I got to know about ACT in detail, which helped me to develop a deeper insight into the therapy that it works. Yes, yes. So see what really stands out for all of us. So with that being said, I'm just going to stop recording.